Welcome to the Talking HealthTech podcast. My name is Peter Birch. Today on the show, I'm joined by Greg Rosenbauer from Your Brain Health and Lynette Reeves from Miroma Project Factory. G'day, team. How are we going?
Hello. How you going, Peter?
Yeah, hi, Peter. I'm good, thanks.
It's great to have you both on the show. Lynette, no stranger to Talking HealthTech and the THT Plus community, and always love what you're doing at Miroma Project Factory in helping solutions get built. And, this is the kind of conversation I love to hear on the podcast as well, because it was, bring a friend week here at Talking HealthTech, but get to hear it in firsthand. Yeah. So we'll dive into that a little bit more. I mean, I do like... we're on a show with an audience of people who are potentially looking to build digital health solutions, and hopefully we can provide some value or a framework that helps people think about that. And a hot tip is that it probably doesn't start with writing a line of code. So let's get stuck into it. So Lynette, look, help us set the scene a little bit more. Can you, perhaps it's probably worth actually giving some context for those unfamiliar. Can you give a high level in terms of you and what you do at Miroma Project Factory?
Yeah, so I'm the digital health lead down at MPF, as I'll shorten it to, just to make life easier. We are a digital development studio based down in Redfern in Sydney, and we build custom health integrated solutions for our clients, but we get involved at any stage that they need us to. So we can jump in at the beginning talking roadmap and strategy, even if you don't even know what your project is yet or your product. We can take you through that stage all the way through to design, build, and long-term support on that as well. And we love working with clients where we can take them on a journey and they can work with us to work in a lovely agile fashion where we can improve and grow a product over time. And that may include not just research projects, but also commercializing research projects that have existed for many years potentially, and trying to push them into a commercial model. So we love working at every stage of that process.
Yeah, that's cool. And given that someone that might be building a digital health product, it's not like they may not have done it many times before. It could be the first time they're approaching it. They feel that there's a problem to address or an opportunity to create something. But, like any good project, sometimes getting started is the hardest part. Lynette, I'd love to hear from you on what the biggest misconception is of building a digital health product, because I heard you say before too, and I stole the line, that commercialization doesn't start with code. So walk me through that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's right. It would be very easy for a founder to come to us and say, I know exactly what I want. I need X, Y, Z, and I need it. And I need all of those things to start. And I must have all of them live to launch my product. It would be easy for me to say yes to that. But what would be very easy, what I should not be doing is telling them yes in every stage of that, because it's really important to consider a lot of external factors. The economy, who's going to use this product, who's going to pay for that product. And if you ever speak to the people from And Health or Commercialisation, that's literally the first question they will ask is, who will pay for the product? If you can't answer that, you can't commercialize. Nobody will want to invest. So that's kind of where it starts. It starts with knowing what will people pay for and who is going to pay for that. And you can only answer that question if you step all the way back to the beginning and really understand what those workflows are. And in any other industry, that's just customer experience, right? It's what touch points are people accessing a product, and what do they do with that product, and what's their exit strategy for that for a customer. But in health, suddenly you have all of these other macro factors. You've got regulation and compliance. You've got clinical workflows from GPs and specialists, and then you've got all of the EHRs, the EMRs, all of the data-led pieces. You've got e-health records. Suddenly you've got all of these other different things that need to all feed into that. And you can't necessarily solve all of those problems at once. You can't digitally solve all those problems at once. Getting compliance is expensive. Integrating with e-health records is expensive. And you're not going to be able to achieve all of those things from your first version. So the best thing you can do is work out what is the smallest digital solution you can create that still allows you to access those touch points and validate it through those touch points. So that code is over here. You know that what you're building here is truly needed and necessary and built in the way that people actually want and will use. And that's, I think, what I mean by commercialization is that code comes almost at the end of that. You need to have done really that work ahead of time. And yes, it may not have any touch points with digital at all to validate that. You don't need that. You need to have sat with those people and those stakeholders to actually really understand what they need and how it's going to fit in.
Yeah, because there's one argument to say that, oh, look, I'm going to future-proof this solution that hasn't been built yet because it's going to be its whole marketplace and ecosystem because everyone's going to be on this platform. So we've got to start architecting it right from the get-go. And that can almost feel a little bit overwhelming and a little bit, well, like it feels like a massive project that hasn't even really been fully validated. But you can be forgiven for going down that path. Whereas what you're saying is, build for the very specific use case and don't even get into the tech side, to begin with. It's like, what's the problem you're solving and who's going to pay for the thing? So
that's right. Because technology is ubiquitous. There are so many different solutions and ways you can build something. But if somebody comes to me and says, this is the problem I'm solving and this is the workflow, it's much easier for me to create or architect a solution around that than it is to say, I don't know who my audience is and I don't know what they need, because I'm going to have to take you through that process. And that's okay. I can do that as well. I just need to know what gaps you're missing so I know how to work with you properly, which is why we sell not just product development, but also consultancy, the consultancy piece at the beginning. You can do that standalone. You don't need to build any code to understand that bit.
Got you. Hey, it's great to be able to have Greg here because we can hear about that journey in real life. So Greg, can you tell us a little bit more about Your Brain Health and the work that you do?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Your Brain Health. We have pivoted now. We are now a medical health and biotech software company. We certainly didn't start out as that. Myself and my co-founder, Associate Professor James McLaughlin, we're both physiotherapists and we are allied health clinic owners. And we saw a problem and believed we had a potential solution in the way that assessments for brain health were done within the clinic, that they were generally fragmented. A lot of the assessment tools we used had not been digitized, so they were still paper and pen. And we had a lot of data sitting around on scanned-in file notes that were poorly informing us as clinicians, and a lot of the client groups that we saw, such as we were starting to get referred a lot of sports concussions, we felt that the assessments weren't objective enough and multidimensional enough. And so we went about initially trying to improve the way that concussion was assessed, and that led us eventually to the very conversation that Lynette was just talking about, where James and I flew over to Sydney and sat down with Lynette for a couple of hours and discussed with her, this is the problem that we've identified. Here's the solution that we see. We know that the brain is complicated, that to do a true, more robust assessment of the brain, we need to be looking at multi-dimensional assessments of brain health. And and then Lynette walked us through that journey as to what a platform might look like, who our potential customers might be. And it's just been a very fluid process since then, where we've pivoted a lot. So whilst we started talking about sports concussion, then all of a sudden pre-dementia screens and aging assessments started being presented to us. But then we had a big opportunity back in sports concussion, and they needed extra tools added to what we already had. So we had to go back and prioritize adding those tools. So it's been and continues to be a pretty fluid process.
That's super cool. I love the story of, in our industry, clinicians that have a need and it probably results in like their existing EMR or practice management system or whatever tools they're using doesn't have the capability. So they usually build a spreadsheet or something similar, and then they kind of tack a few things on, and they can do the thing they need to do, but then at some point they go, this should be a platform or this should be software. And there's various motivations in order to do that. I'd love to get your kind of take, because it sounded like, well, you kind of got the capability, or like there's a missing gap, but like, what was the reason to go from, well, we could just build something for ourselves to be able to provide the service, to then switching to this, well, hey, I could build a product that then other people could use to be able to do this thing. What did that look like?
Yeah, so one of the first services that Your Brain Health, so we were founded in November of 2022. One of the first services that we started providing was baseline screening services. So we'd go into sports clubs, elite, some professional sports teams, but also community sports teams and schools. And we were starting to capture healthy brain data across multiple domains, and we were storing that data. So should an individual that we'd screened have a concussion in the future, we had healthy data to compare their injured data to, which allows us to make better decisions around rehabilitation and about monitoring recovery and when you're ready to return. So as we started that process, we were using 4 or 5 different assessment tools, and we had all these different PDFs and various other ways of storing the information, but we weren't able to send parents or coaches or doctors reports, because reports took us a long time per individual. We had to go into each of the different platforms we were using, download the PDF, and create an email with all the attached PDFs, which was not a great user experience for the people that we were screening, and was we'd go into a school and assess 100 students in the one screening session. So it was taking us 5 or 6 minutes per student to create these email reports. So it just wasn't efficient, and also wasn't a great user experience. So we had multiple parents sort of complain that they'd paid this money for this screening, yet hadn't yet received a report, etc. So initially, when we went to build the platform, it was to assist us with more efficient and better quality service for our baseline screening. But as we got going, we were like, well, this would help with other assessments we do in the clinic, and this helps solve other problems. So it very quickly snowballed into a much bigger platform than just a platform to assist us with our baseline screenings.
Yeah. Look, I mean, that's a light bulb moment in itself, or a lot of value for people that could be looking at a spreadsheet that they think should probably be turned into a product. I think that the magic happens, or the real need occurs when you incorporate workflow, as Lynette was kind of suggesting to earlier, because in that example, you've got it's not just the information could exist in a database and then look pretty on a front UI. You're talking about, well, once the thing happens, then we need to do this, and that's got to connect to X, Y, Z. So that's a bit of a process in and of itself. One thing I think of, Lynette, too, is that in healthcare, it's not just budding young entrepreneurs like Greg who would reach out to you saying we need to build a solution. Often these solutions that need to be built often come from, be it academia, or there's research that's been done that means that solutions are coming from a place of, well, here's some good evidence-based information, but now let's commercialize it and turn it into a product. We know full well that a lot of good research and evidence might be surfaced with the intention of commercializing, but never really sees the light of day, or sometimes not even done with intention to commercialize. It's done for the intention of to sit in a drawer, which is a bit weird. But tell me why there's so much good research and evidence that's created that just doesn't see the light of day.
I think ultimately it comes down to the fact that academics, by their nature, are not necessarily founders. And just like you said, some researchers are very much go into it with the idea that this would make a great commercial product, and they may have that preconception before they even do the research. So they're almost trying to convince themselves that the research will actually create the evidence that there's an audience needed for it. But there's other researchers that go in literally for the data. That is they are there for the rigor of research and the findings, the outcomes themselves. They're not necessarily there for the reach, and they don't have that drive to want to commercialize. So you've got all these different types of researchers, different types of people, and their very nature of what they would like to do with the information and how they want to present that. And that's a very different approach we have to take with them as well. I've got researchers that were working on on their research product for 10 years, and then they decided they wanted to commercialize it, but they've actually struggled a little bit to try to really articulate what that commercial offering really is, because they've been so focused on the fact that the product itself is effective. They haven't worked out how to scale that. And so most tools that are created by researchers don't have that ability to reach or scale. And if they're trying to commercialize an existing product that they already have, they're going to come to a very swift realization that they need to step back. They need to now go onto a different path, which is let's look at what that commercial offering actually is. And there are grants available for that. I know a lot of universities offer those kind of enabling grants. They're there specifically to help academics work out what they need to commercialize, to really set them up to understand what those next steps are. I even know of some researchers whose university have actually sent them through accelerator courses, the likes of which that we've seen by Cicada and Ant Health, etc., specifically to give them those skill sets to understand how to think like a founder. And then I know others who are like, I've got this research here and I just want to give it to somebody else. I don't want to see it die, but I don't have those kind of capabilities and don't want to do that. And that's fine too, understanding where it lives. But it really does frustrate me as a developer who is trying to toggle the line between both what the research is trying to determine and what that outcome we're trying to find is for research sake, but also what their goal is long term. And I do have to do a lot of education in the middle to say, well, for the budget you've got, let's look at something that's small, capable of getting the data that you need to create the evidence, but I'm going to give you the very strict, I'm going to remove the illusion that this is going to be usable in any kind of commercial capacity. You're going to have to, at that stage, if you find the evidence that it's worthwhile, we start this again. We're going to start the entire process again, but from an informed position. So, it's having those conversations and really getting academics to understand where that comes from. And I was lucky with Your Brain Health team that we've got both Greg on commercial side, we've got James on the academia side, but both of them on the practical clinical side. And between those three wonderful little parts of the triangle, it was very easy to conversation to have because they'd already validated the necessity for it. The audience were there. They had, by the time we came to launch, they had a list of clients who were literally signing up on day one. And we had so many users just from day one, just because they'd done so much pre-work in both the paper-based formats, but also that while we were building to get them to the stage of what else do we need? Here's a little sneak peek. What else do we need? What's missing from the process? So, yes.
Yeah, Greg, it sounds like you got the good combination there. Was there anything you wanted to add to those points that Lynette raised?
She's very right. So James, my co-founder, he is an academic and researcher, and so we've always been very strong in the information that we've been producing, and we've always had great confidence that around the evidence of the assessments that we've been doing, and that's come from James's ability to be able to go through the process of making sure that everything that we're putting into our platform is strongly validated and comes from a strong evidence base. And so it has worked remarkably well, having James from that sort of academic background, but not probably as interested in the commercial side. Whereas I'm more interested in the commercial side and certainly don't have his academic strengths, and so it's worked. It's worked well so far.
Hey, I'm thinking about, incorporating a lot of that rigor around the research into a solution. The more you kind of jam those rules into a product, the potentially more complicated it could get, either behind the scenes or even on the front end for the end user of, say, a piece of software. And sometimes they say for a product to be scalable and applicable to more people, the simpler, the kind of better. Also, I think about, your journey where you've built a tool originally to solve a problem for yourselves, but then, you now try and need to make it applicable for more people. How did you go about, I guess, building a platform that is sustainable or replicable to other parts of, the ecosystem beyond just your own kind of personal requirements, and also balancing the need for all of that research rigor, but also creating something that's sellable too?
I think both James and I have been lucky with our backgrounds. We've worked across such diverse fields. So my initial work as a physiotherapist was in elite sport. I was the head physiotherapist at Lord's Cricket Ground in London for 6 or 7 years, and then worked with Cricket Australia and other elite sporting organisations. So I know sport very well. And with my the allied health clinic I own, we see a wide variety of clients, from neurological cases to sports people to people looking to do active aging assessments, etc. So, and James has a similar wide base of knowledge. So we were both able to come into it with that good knowledge base. But then we started chatting to a lot of potential clients. So we are unable to mention their name at the moment, as it's still in process. But one of Europe's largest sporting organisations is looking at adopting our platform. And we entered into conversations with them 6 months ago about what is it that you're not happy with your current platform, and what would you ideally like to see in what we're producing. And they were able to give us really good guidance as to what they wanted. And we've had other similar discussions across other organisations, from corporate health groups to different sporting organisations and then both James's clinic and my clinic have a lot of very experienced clinicians in them. So we've been able to get them to test the product and ask them about, what did you like, what didn't you like, what would you like to see in future versions. So we've been fortunate in that we've been able to get a lot of guidance and advice in the process of building the platform.
Yeah, I guess when you do that co-design right, you get all the good bits of the expertise from all those individuals you've worked with over the years, and all the cool different settings too. That sounds awesome, doing work with the Australian cricket team, by the way. We probably would have met a few years ago. I probably would have played for Australia, but I had to do this podcast. So, but, it's probably... Well, look, probably more famous doing this podcast, but whatever. And get to speak to wonderful people like yourselves. I don't know where I was going with that one. So probably a huge amount of FOMO for working at Lord's. Anyway, let's move on. Hey, Lynette, before you brought up this point around grants and funding and being able to kind of provide the capital that's needed in different ways for some of these solutions, because there are a handful of programs that exist in the accelerators, incubators. I'd love to hear your take on what the industry is doing now. And my own personal take is that over the years, we've seen probably an increase in programs and capability within Australia, but there's probably some more work to be done. I'd love to get your take on what the industry is doing to support more of these solutions be built.
Yeah, it's good to see that the Australian industry is actually really good at identifying that there is a gap in the middle. And I think organisations out there, and I keep dropping their name because I just think they're so great, right? And Health obviously are the key one here, who are really doing a great job of representing people like Greg and organizations within Australia to really help them understand how they can take those products from research or those early stage through to commercial, real products that can actually make money for people and do good in the world. And I think that's a really positive outcome. And I don't think you see a lot of that in other countries. I mean, I may be talking out of turn here because I'm just not that embedded into those processes, but I know that breaking into the United States, for example, is a whole different kettle of fish. And then if you try to break into the UK, suddenly you've got the NHS to deal with, which is its own beast of its own making, which everyone is very protective about, but will similarly criticize. Unless you're British, you're not allowed to criticize it unless you're British. I think there's a lot of grants out there to help in that little messy middle bit, but they're very competitive. And I think it's really hard for founders, especially in health tech, because there is so much to consider when you talk about compliance. I need to demonstrate that it works, which needs money because I need to now build something to research something. And now I need money to rebuild it for a commercial purpose, but nobody's going to invest in that because I haven't yet worked out who's paying for it. So I need to do that bit next, and I need a grant or some funding to do that bit of it. So, and then you need to kind of do stage by stage to work out what funding is out there to do what bit of that process. And it's all very push-pull because sometimes you need the compliance before you're going to get investment, but compliance is expensive. So what order do you do everything in, and how much risk do you want to take in getting to a point where you can get that? There's a lot of faking it until you make it in some ways in how you talk about your product and what it can do. But there's some areas where you just cannot make a claim that it does something unless you've got that evidence. And so it's very slow. It feels like a very, very slow process for health tech. And yet we all know that the first in, best dressed, it's just like any other industry. The innovators really need to have the mindset, but also the traction to do that. And unfortunately that takes a lot of funding. So you have to get there's a lot of work involved in getting early angel investment, before there's any money coming in the door. It feels like you're already behind the 8 ball on so much of that piece of it until you can actually launch something that somebody will pay for. And I think that's unfortunate in the industry at the moment. And is that just the way it is? I don't really know, but I know that you have to do all of those steps if you want to try and get into health tech. It's just working out who's there to help you do that. And it's just a very competitive environment here. As it is everywhere, I think. Yeah,
no, there's a lot of nuance and all that complexity, and it depends on the stage, et cetera, that I can tell you're well in the mix of it on a day-to-day based on that answer, Lynette. So I think the common thread for me too, if I was looking to do it, either as a first timer or someone that's been on the journey but probably solo, is work with someone who's done it before, and that's pretty age-old advice. And I know that MPF have done quite a few of these projects at different stages, and be it through the advice or the build. So that makes a lot of sense.
That was,
great.
If I could just, that was actually when James and I sat down and discussed potentially looking to build a platform. One of the things that we were quite anxious about was neither of us having any sort of tech knowledge. And we were concerned about who we partnered with, because were we in a strong position to be judging who was going to be a good partner for us? James did his PhD through Neura, a leading Australian neurological research group, and they had done a lot of work with MPF. So it was, we felt confident going with MPF, given that Neura had previously, positive experiences with them. So, but without those links, I don't know how we would have decided on who to partner with. So we were fortunate in having that strong recommendation from Neura. But without that, it would have been a Google search. I don't know where we would have got started on that process.
Yeah, you don't want to build it off a dude from Fiverr or something. So
Yeah, health tech has a whole different set of considerations, and it's that there are lots of agencies out there who do specialize in it. But finding those specific ones, you're right. It's very difficult to determine who's best for specific products.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think that we've provided some good food for thought and for also advice for those potentially looking to build something or already in the mix and looking at I guess how they're going and whether they should be pivoting or whatever. But Greg, lastly, I'm just curious about I guess where you're going with your brain health and that kind of, be it the roadmap or the strategy forward, or what's on your radar for the next kind of 6, 12, 24, and what can we look forward to seeing?
Sure. So Screen It, which is the name of our platform, was released about 3 weeks ago commercially. And we've got a initial focus in sports concussion. And we've got some really strong uptake. We're working with Formula One teams, British horse racing, English football, English cricket, European basketball, AFL teams, all sorts of high-profile clients early. We're very confident in the sports concussion field. We've got a couple of the leading sports physicians globally in sports concussion as directors of our business now, and helping guide us there. And they're also certainly able to open some good doors for us. So given our traction in sports concussion and that there's a large market out there for sports concussion, we're continuing with that as our primary focus. And that's certainly been where we've focused the initial build of the product. But we're pretty much there now as far as the product has everything that you can want for sports concussion assessment. It's the only product globally to have been given permission to integrate all of the CISG, the Concussion and Sports Groups tools. So that's been a big advantage for us. As to what's next, we've got various grant applications in at the moment that may influence that. One of the grant applications is to develop the product for pre-dementia screening. So if we were successful with that grant, we'd probably pivot down that track. But my next conversation today is with a large corporate health group who are looking at adding brain health assessments to their corporate health screens. So there seems to be a bit of interest there, and the finance of it all is challenging. So we do have to go where the money is a little bit at the moment. But going forward, we have a roadmap where we can see that we'll continue to add all sorts of new validated but novel assessments, such as bloods and saliva. We'll continue to work with various different technology partners to get better objective data around balance and reaction time. We're working with a VR oculomotor and vestibular ocular company who give us some really excellent data in those fields. Another area which we didn't initially identify was going to be strong for us is, as we've started to work with some of the sporting organisations around improving their concussion management, they've been excited about using our brain data metrics for performance. So a Formula One team we work with, we don't just work with the drivers, we work with the engineers and the pit crew as well, about making sure that they are ready to perform at the beginning of each race. They talk about being in different time zones and hot, stressful, loud environments, and can we help them assess which of their staff are ready to go and ready to perform. So there's a whole interesting world out there of performance, both sports and corporate performance. So yeah, as I said, due to finance, we will partly be drawn to where the strongest commercial opportunities are. So, that's where we're going.
I think what we've tried to do and work with the team over at Your Brain Health on throughout this time is identifying what is that core user journey of the technology. Forget the screenings for a second. We know there will be screenings, but what is the core workflow for clinicians or physios or whoever's going to pay for the platform to conduct screenings on people. And then we built it in such a way that building the screenings themselves scales really easily and quickly. So I think we've got about 60 screenings on there at the moment, but we can rapidly add more screenings. So, because we knew that there would be new use cases coming up in the future, and we wanted to make sure that it was built and architected in a way that that was scalable without too much, without having to do huge amounts of scoping work. For instance, the guys just need to give us the screening questions themselves and how it needs to work and what the scoring is, and we can pretty rapidly integrate that into the program. So it's very easy it was built specifically with that future thinking in mind.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, look, I really appreciate the time that you've both taken to walk us through and give us some useful advice for those building solutions, and also, some insights behind the curtain in terms of how things have been built for your brain health and where things are going. So all the details will be in the show notes of this episode, and people can, of course, check out the Miroma Project Factory listing on the Talking HealthTech website. Greg, Lynette, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Talking HealthTech. Make sure you like and subscribe and share this episode with someone who might find it valuable. For more information and resources about healthcare innovation, visit talkinghealthtech.com.